Awesome.
So a very warm welcome to the International Sparkling Festival online. I am Gerhild Burkard, organizer of the International Sparkling Festival in Germany, which couldn't take part last year and hopefully perhaps this year. And my aim is that I want to bring really very good sparkling producers around the world on stage. So I'm very happy tonight that we make a worldwide trip. And I'm happy to introduce first a European. So I am in Germany, Cologne, and Elisabeth Figueras from Castillo de Perelada from Spain. Hi. Welcome.
Hi,
and then we are going really south. We are going to South Africa and with Andiswa Mapheleba. And she's from South Africa, from Pongracz winery. And there is now 7 o'clock in the evening, but they have summer. So she will tell us a little bit what happens. And because here in Europe, it's cold, it's winter. And then we are going really very far to the west side, and we are going to California. And we disturbed Arno Weyrich from Roederer's tape during his breakfast, because there it's now 9 o'clock in the morning. And so if people want to talk with us and to speak with us or to chat with us, they have to be on YouTube. So inscribe on YouTube. Otherwise, we can't see them, but you can hear us, and everything is fine, and hopefully everything is okay. So when we start now, we start in Europe because it's my country, not my country, but if we see this global part, we start in Europe with Castillo de Perelada. And we talk about cava. So if we are talking about cava, it's not only one region, because in whole Spain you can produce cavas. And the main part is Catalonia and near Barcelona. Behind me I have some maps, and you see here where we are. Just have a look over there. We are here in near the frontier of France, and here is Barcelona. So in this area, Penedès and Barcelona, this is the main part of the cava production, and historical the main part. And on the other hand, you see some other regions where we can produce cava. So let us talk about you and Castillo Perelada. Elisabeth, explain us a little bit about history and how do you make your wine? Because you are a woman in a man world as well, I think. And explain us a little bit about Perelada.
Yes, first of all, thank you to be here. I wanted to explain just a little bit the history, because the wine has been made at the Castillo de Perelada since the Middle Age, as shown in several documents. When Miguel Mateu bought the castle in 1923, one of his first objectives was to revitalize the wine production traditions, and has incorporated the most modern technology to create wines that show the soils and vines of the Empordà. But the Castillo de Perelada are not only a company; is a family with 3 generations. For example, the castle, the Perelada castle that I have here, makes it one of the most emblematic landmakers of the Empordà. The east wings of the castle is fortified with 2 impressive towers at the corners. And the image of these 2 towers has become the symbol of the wines of Perelada Cava that after we are going to taste. I don't know if you can see it in the label. So there are 2 towns. just a little bit more about the castle. Don Miguel decorated the castle with his collections of sculptures, tapestries, furnitures, paintings, coin, glasswares, ceramics, all of them piles of incalculable value. We also has around 80,000 volume of books in the library. And in the gardens that there are around to this castle is where Arturo Suque and his wife, Karma Mateu, started the Perelada Castle Festival, a cultural event that is today international recognized. So this is the more or less the history of
So it's a very
Perelada.
a very historic site, and I know you do a lot of cultural things as well, and festivals, and so if we are now talking, it's history. But if we are now talking about the wines, and I think if we are talking about the wines, I say wine because I know people normally they say sparkling producers, they say wine as well to their sparklings. So naturally today we are talking about the sparklings. And I think before we are talking about the wines or the sparklings, please have a nice happy new year. I think we say hello, and I think this is the most important thing actually for our life in this period of pandemic lockdown. And so cheers to everyone, and some of the audience, they bought these wines as well, and we will see it. So okay, cheers.
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 It's nice for breakfast, Arno. So now we are talking about Cava. So Cava, I already explained that it's not only one region, it's in the whole area of Spain. And we have different types of Cava. And perhaps you can explain a little bit the difference, because there is now a minimum of the second fermentation, which are lying on the yeast. Sparkling wine and the second fermentations are lying on the yeast. And perhaps you can explain us a little bit about Cava.
Yes, if this one thing that sets Cava apart from most sparkling wines, it's the production method. The method Champenois, from its French origins, the traditional method, is differentiated from other systems by second fermentation is inside to the bottle. I try to explain the different steps quickly. So we start here in Spain, the harvest in August, can be manual or mechanic. The grapes are present gently in batches, separated by varieties, with the maximum will 66%. We are going to make the first fermentation, so making the base wines. And the different base wines obtained from the grapes varieties are blended together, and the resulting wine is clarified and stabilized. And in that moment, we start the tirage. The blend of base wines is bottled, and we added the tirage liquid. That this tirage liquid has the sugar and yeast, and this mix of yeast and sugar creates the second fermentation inside to the bottle. I don't know.
So this is the principle, yes, of the second fermentation. Yeah.
Exact.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see it here, but the bottle are stacked in a horizontal position, minimum 9 months in the cave, in silence, in a good humidity and a really good temperature. And the carbon dioxide produced by the second fermentation is tapped into the bottle, so and forming the bubbles. The DIT is that I don't know if you see it here. The DIT is falls to the bottom of the bottle, and these leaves produce the great aromas. And now we need to remove that list. So the bottle is gradually turned and ending up in the vertical position, in that position, okay? And
Yeah, this
And
problem is we have, and then the yeast has to go out, and this is the principle of second fermentation. But when we are talking now about your cavas, and and because we will taste the first cava, we will taste it, the rosé one. It's our first one, the stars. So the minimum of cavas has to be aging 9 months.
yeah,
And
yes.
This is the cava de guarda, and then you have different qualities. And today we are talking about reserve and grand reserve. Perhaps if we start now, or if we taste now your wines, because I didn't open this bottle, I want to open it for the new year. So I think I open it and then we taste it. And I'm really happy that South Africa has the bottles as well to taste, and she can talk with us, and she has the Spanish wines as well. So if we are opening now the bottle, because it's New Year, and in every session I have to open a bottle. I love this sound, and for the New Year it's very, very important. So. Super. Great.
Yes. So
we have a rosé in our class.
Yes, for sure. We have it the vintage 2017.
Yeah. This is the Star. It's the name Star, and it's from Perelada, and it's Brut 2017. Explain us a little bit, what are the grape varieties inside, and how do you work?
It's brut, so the sugar that has inside to the glass is 6 grams of sugar at maximum, and it's aging 12 months before the gorging minimum, but this has more than 15. And we select all the grapes. The 85% of that varieties are Grenache, and the 15% are Pinot Noir. You know that the Grenache is one of the most highly planted varieties in the world. This variety bunches early, but has a long life cycle. The clusters are medium size and delicate compact. The fruit round with a fine skin and is characterized by the high sugar content and moderate acidity. So it's delicate angel pink in color. Bright.
It's very bright in the color. It's very bright, and it's not so dark.
It's not so dark because I love it to use the red Grenache because it's one of the most highly used varieties for making the Cava Rosé. But I love it to use the Pinot Noir too. And the Pinot Noir has a very light color. And well, how can I say it? No, the Pinot Noir, that is the very famous variety around the world. But in here in Dio Cava was the youngest grape of the Dio Cava. It's used in Cava Rosado and was authorized in 1998. So it's very, very, very young.
So if we smell it, so you have some red fruits for sure, and perhaps Andiswa, it's the first time I don't know whether it's the first time you drink cava, but you don't know Perelada, I think. And what do you think about this wine?
What I would like to know is that what is the typical character of the varietal that you used here besides Pinot Noir? Because there's something that I'm picking up that I've never really picked up before in a sparkling.
Because it's Grenache, it's another kind, it's not Pinot Noir. We will talk about Pinot Noir later, yeah. A little bit Pinot Noir as well, but Grenache.
Yeah, I think the Grenache has that aroma very, very clean, floral, and fruit. It's long lasting, and but the elegance is from the Pinot Noir. because the Pinot Noir is very, very aromatic and low tannins, but the most important thing is the elegance, that extremely seductive aroma that has all the cavas that has the Pinot Noir. And in the palate,
so the bubbles are very fine on the palate. I think it's very elegant and very fine.
And it's complex, its fruit is smooth and excellent balance. The acidity is not very, very high, but is higher than at the normal cavas, because with brut is 6 grams of sugar. So the balance, we need to have a really good acidity.
Yeah.
I love it to pick up the Pinot Noir very, very early, at the beginning of August or at the end of July, just to have that acidity and this fresher of the cavas.
Yes, I think it's very fresh. It's a very good aperitif, but later I have a surprise for you, because every time I tell people you have to eat something as well with sparkling wine, because sparkling is not only an aperitif, it's something to match it with food, and so it can be very interesting. And I think here with a light food, with perhaps some duck slices and with perhaps some red fruits with it, it can be very, very nice. And later we talk at the end. There are 3 other bottles we won't taste today, but we have 2 other rosés as well, and from other wine countries. So the most important thing, I think that is Reserva, and the Stars is a Reserva wine, and the minimum is 18 months on the yeast. And for cavas you have Gran Reservas as well, and you have Paraje de Calificado. So this is the high-end product and very rare, but the Gran Reservas, I think you have Gran Reservas as well, and Reservas, yeah. So what is the minimum for you? What do you think? How long does they stay on the yeast, Elisabeth?
At the end, depends that you are trying to found it. If you want a fresher, a very aromatic, and explosion, just with 9 months, it's enough. But you need to take care about which varieties you use it. And if you want the complexity, well balanced, the bubble really, really small, like
very
that
small.
one.
Fine, yeah.
That was not only explosion, is like seductive, elegance, and clean all your mouth. You need to wait in the cellar, maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 years. It depends. And there are varieties that can be in the cellar for 10 years, and the other varieties only 10 months. So this is something that not especially in cava, if all the sparklings. So
okay. So if we are going now to our next trip, because I think we will interact in between, but if we are going now to South Africa, Andiswa, I have already been in South Africa, but not at your winery. And so explain us a little bit about the history, because we are now here in South Africa. Here is Cape Town, and you sent us a map where you produce your sparkling wines, or where the grapes are growing. And you have different regions, and here it's Cape Town. So here's Cape Horn, and here's Cape Town. And if you want to visit the winery, it's near Stellenbosch. And so explain us a little bit about the philosophy, about the history, because Pongrácz is not it's not a South African name and not an English name. So where does it come from? And explain us a little bit about history.
Firstly, thank you for having me. I don't know if am I audible now? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, perhaps a little bit louder. You can speak a little bit louder, but it's quite okay.
I was speaking a bit softer earlier. So basically, Pongrácz is named after a Hungarian refugee. His name was Desiderius Pongrácz. who fled to South Africa. Before he came to South Africa, he actually qualified as a viticulturalist in his own country, and he lived in Budapest. He got to South Africa and he contributed so much when it comes to grape varietals that are used in the bottle fermentation traditional methods, such as Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. So he was, I think for myself, I very much, I think of myself as a Desiderius Pongrácz, because he was very much an academic, a person who wants to learn more about things that matter when it comes to the wine industry. He sadly then passed away in, and then thereafter, decade later, the company decided to pay tribute to his name because he contributed so much. There are even articles and books written by him. So the company decided to make Pongrácz, and which mainly consists of Chardonnay and Pinot Noir.
So it's Chardonnay and Pinot. Okay, if we're talking about Cap Classique, and
so in South Africa, because as we know, each country has their own patent or word that they use, and we call it Classique. When we refer to the method, we call it MCC. It's basically very much what similar to what Elizabeth explained. We source our grapes mainly, as you can see, from cooler climates, regions. We because we want
the winery here.
So we choose these places because we want to have a lower sugar and high acidity. And then we do cold fermentation. These grapes are handpicked. They're whole bunch pressed. We do cold fermentation. After, depending on our own discrepancies and the consistency that we want to keep, we decide whether or not to maintain malolactic fermentation. Thereafter, we prepare for secondary bottling. During the bottling stages, in South Africa, very similar to Cava, the legislation allows us only a minimum of 9 months on lease, minimum to call it Cap Classique. But in our ranges for Pongrácz, we use a minimum of 15 months to give it that character for bottle fermentation.
So the MCC, that means Methode Cap Classique, was invented or was introduced in 1992, and I think today there are about 90 different wineries inside this method. So they have signed, or they were in this group in Methode Cap Classique, and the minimum is 9 months. And you already told us that for you it's better to stay longer on the yeast, so the minimum it's 15 months. So what are your mainly grape varieties, and so it's Pinot and Chardonnay, and you have other grapes, or it's only these two grape varieties?
It's mainly Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, but we have actually played around with Chenin Blanc, because as you know, South Africa has a surplus of Chenin Blanc. So we played around with Chenin Blanc and a bit of Riesling, but not that much that we won't keep our consistency. So we also be consistent, because the bottle that you're about to taste is a non-vintage. So we try to what Pongrácz is as a brand.
Okay, so so we just will taste now the wine, and it was a little bit behind because I want to cool it, and this is the bottle. I think it's a very nice bottle as well, and a very nice shape. And you see Pongrácz Brut, and at the back side it's explained Methode Cap Classique, MCC, and so this was the minimum of 15 months, and you have done malolactic.
Yes, malolactic fermentation did occur in the bottle. I'm sure when you taste it, you can also taste it. tell that it has gone through malolactic fermentation, because certain bubbles that do have that have a more buttery and bread-like character when you taste it. Yeah. But you also get that green apple and freshness that you get from you typically get from a Chardonnay.
Yeah, you have this green apple, a little bit a lemon as well, and lemon zest, and so it's very fresh. And you are now on the other side of the earth, so you have summer, and you told us before we started our live that you will have the harvest in a few weeks or next week, I think. So it's totally different to Europe.
Well, we're actually going to start the harvest not this coming week, but the week after. Very interesting times because we are in a global pandemic, but I mean, it's the new normal. It's all about adapting. So that's what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. So now I tasted it, and it was very long on the palate, very fine bubbles. And so with a little bit acidity, it's amazing. And I think here in South Africa, what do you eat, for example, when you have these kind of sparklings? If you make a food pairing, a combination of wine and food and sparkling and food, what do you eat?
So I would typically have a salmon sashimi with that. It's the acidity is going to bring out the flavors from the food, or you can just have oysters with that. It goes really well with that. But I always say for myself, taste is very subjective. I've had people from my in tastings who said that one of our wines should be paired with tripe. I don't know if you know what tripe is. It's the intestines of an animal.
Yes, so it's clipper or tripe, and we know, it's the interior. So we know it's in the south of Germany. There it's a tradition to eat it, and I think in a lot of Mediterranean areas you can eat it as well. Okay, I can imagine. I don't prefer it, but nevertheless, I think. It can be okay, and it can be a fine combination. And so how many degrees do you have now in Stellenbosch?
Sweating.
It's warm.
Today, 36. How many? Yes, 36 degrees. 36.
36. Okay. Yeah. Okay. We have about 2 degrees, and it's snowing. And yesterday in the Spanish area, it was snowing as well. So it's very hot, and it will be a good harvest. What do you think this year?
I mean, it will be an interesting one. But I think what makes us fortunate at Pongrácz is the fact that we play around with so many different regions. And that also helps us in getting, again, I'll say consistency. If one part of the region lacks, we can always compensate it with the other. So as long as we keep our building blocks separate, so that when you decide to make a final blend, we have something to work with. So it will be fine. It will be good. Very optimistic. Yes.
So in South Africa now it's dinner time, and in Cava region or in Spain it's dinner time, but it's breakfast time now in California, and it's 9:30 over there. So I don't know. It's nice to have a glass, perhaps, for breakfast.
Sure. It's Sunday, so it's brunch. It's perfect.
Yeah,
thank you, Gerhild, for creating a brunch event for me.
Yeah, it's brunch time. So welcome, Arno from Roederer Estate. So if we are talking about California, so it's really in the west, on the west side, and we are just here on this part. Here. And if we are here, San Francisco, and it's a 2 hours ride to go to Anderson Valley and to Roederer Estate. So when we talk about in before our stream, you have told me such a lot of things, and it was very, very interesting because Europe and South Africa I have already been. I have been in San Francisco, but never have been in Anderson Valley. Hopefully I will come as soon as possible. So explain us a little bit what is what happens in this region, and what are the subjects concerning climate, grape varieties, and soils.
Right. So in a nutshell, Roederer Estate is actually the offspring of a French winery called Champagne Louis Roederer from Reims in France. So there's a family decision in the early 80s to establish an estate, in California. It was the gold rush, the gold rush to wine, and quite a few other, wineries, from Europe, including, Spain, decided, to go and discover California and establish, vineyards and wineries in order to cater to the local market. The American wine drinker was discovering wine. They were going away more and more from coffee and bourbon and beer to discover more and more wine. So there was definitely a need to supply well-made local wine. So the Rousseau family decided in 1982 to buy land in California, and the choice on why picking the Anderson Valley, which is a very small appellation in Northern California, was for its location. You can see on the map that it's on the north part of San Francisco, but also pretty close to the ocean. So we are hours north of San Francisco, so about 200 kilometers north, but we're also about 40 kilometers away from the coast. But we're at the latitude of the south of Spain. So we're at the latitude of Valencia or Lisbon, if you're on the Atlantic coast.
Okay.
So pretty much, south latitude, but we can grow Pinot Noir and Chardonnay in the Anderson Valley because the Pacific Ocean is fairly cold. So if you keep going south, when you end up being in Monterey or Los Angeles, everybody's on the beach and swimming, and it's nice. For us, north, this is cold water. You need a wetsuit. If you want to go swimming. So it's cold water, which is around 15 Celsius more or less year round.
Okay.
Because we are not so far from Alaska, and then the Alaska current brings a lot of cold water along the west coast. So this is a huge mass of cold water that creates basically like a natural air conditioning system. And whenever it gets warm inland, it sucks that moist and cool air from the Pacific Ocean inland. And then everybody knows, and everybody has seen pictures of San Francisco in the fog. This is typically what happens. Right now, if I'm looking outside, it is very foggy right now outside. And the fog's gonna burn off, by in the morning, mid-morning. It's gonna be sunny and nice and bright, and then the fog comes back later at night. So there's that cycle of warming up and cooling down every day that brings that enough cool pattern to keep the acidity. So we've all been talking about méthode traditionnelle, méthode champenoise, and basically we rely on two things. We need a place where we can grow delicate fruit that retains acidity. So we're not making red wine. We're not making, extracted, dense, powerful wine. We're making delicate acid-driven wine. So the location where you can keep the acid, and then we can have enough of that hang time also, no matter. So the Anderson Valley, and that's an interesting, part. We can pick grapes from bloom to harvest within that 90 to 100 days of hang time, which is pretty typical of Champagne.
It's very typical for Europe as well, and I think Elizabeth, it's the same in Cava, I think, and it's different. Andiswa in South Africa, how many days between bloom and harvesting is it?
It's very different. It all depends on the vintage also.
Okay. And this year it was because in Europe, mostly in Europe, in California as well, it's 90 to 100 days, and in South Africa it's shorter.
Yeah, it's shorter because we did have hot summers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's shorter. I think it's maybe about just above 80.
80. Okay, so it's different as well. Okay, if we come back now to Roederer Estate, you told us that it's very important because of the freshness, and the acidity is very important for these sparkling wines. And I think this is the most important thing for every sparkling wine. You need acidity, otherwise it's not a good sparkling wine. So, explain us a little bit, how do you work? Because behind you have some barrels, big barrels, and explain us a little bit.
Right. So we are family owned. So the family that owns Champagne Roederer, when they decided to come to California, the idea was to craft a sparkling wine, so not a champagne anymore. It's not the region of Champagne, so it's a premium sparkling wine that would basically have the family characteristics of the wine. So long aging in the bottle. So there is a regulation in France that says in order to be non-vintage, it has to be minimum 15 months. There's no specific regulation in California. It's the Wild West. It can be 1 day, 1 year, 10 years, 100 years, who knows, right? But what matters in terms of quality. So when the family established the estate here, they decided that sticking to some of those French rules in California actually makes sense, because there's a quality-driven decision. So the sparkling wine I make, I age it on average 2.5 years, in the bottle. So on the yeast before disgorgement. I am using reserve wine that I age on average for 4 years in the cask. So not all of the wine goes in cask, like the one behind me. I have 64 of those casks, and about 10% of the wine in every single one of those non-vintage bottles contains a reserve wine. So
explain us a little bit, what is a reserve wine, because the audience, perhaps they are not so inhabited to talk about reserve wines. And so what is a reserve wine?
In this case, when you make a still wine, you make wine, goes in a barrel in a tank, you bottle it, and then you ship that bottle, and this is it. For us, when we actually make the wine, we end up making a base wine of Pinot Noir, Chardonnay in a tank. It lasts a small period of time. It's about less than 6 months. Then we bottle that wine, and it ferments on the yeast, and it ages in the bottle for extended period of time. From every vintage, some of that, the one I make, goes in cask. So it's not bottled yet. So it goes in cask. For further aging inside the casks. And when I do my blending, I use one from previous vintages, aging those casks, and I'm blending them in order to create the house style that I wanted to craft.
So it's a very typical style for Champagne as well. They're doing a lot of this kind in Champagne area in France. And Elisabeth and Andiswa, Elisabeth, you are doing this as well. You work with reserve wines, or only with the wines of the year, or with different blends of different years, but not reserve wines, older ones?
No, for sure. I completely agree with what Arnold has explained. So we use some barrels to keep some wines to aging there, to give all that aging characters, flavors, the vainillas or coffees, toffees, all that third primary aromas. Special for the wines or the cavas that will be aging 2 or 3 or 4 years in the cellar. So yeah, we use it the same methodology, and we use it when we do it the coupage. We are using the actual vintage, but we have some another wines in the cellar just to blending, and we made the really good coupages.
Coupage, that means you blend these different wines. You do this blending of different wines, and you are near the French border, so you speak French as well. And sometimes for me it's easier to talk in these French terms, because I'm a lot of time in France, and Okay, if we go to Andiswa, you are working with reserve wines as well, or not really older ones?
Only for us, we don't really use reserve wines. We only use a portion of, for our premium wines, we use a portion of that that has been aged for a maximum 6 months on the barrel. So it's not reserve from a different or previous vintage. We use that specific vintage for that particular vintage. If you understand.
Okay, thank you. We are going now back to Roederer. Arno, you told us, because in the other areas we have some laws, that means a minimum of the yeast. So you told us it's Wild West. So it can be some bubbles for one day or whatever. So, but you really want to make quality sparklings, and I think we will taste it now, because I think it's a very nice wine, and it's Quartet. The name is Quartet, and and you explain a little bit what does it mean, Quartet, and and it's named Anderson Valley, and explain us.
So you have, it's the same wine, however, oops, here we go. So Roederer Estate is the label for the Northern America markets. And then whenever we export, it's exported under the Quartet label in order to respect the fact that Champagne Roederer, in Europe, and Roederer Estate would not be, competing, for the same name. So the export label of Roederer Estate is Quartet in Japan and then in Europe. But it all comes from the estate, from the Anderson Valley, and the style is based on mainly being, Chardonnay. This is a 60% blend of Chardonnay, 40% of Pinot Noir, aged 2.5 years on the yeast. This is about 10% of reserve wine from the oak, cask. This is to develop the mid palate and then extend the finish. Dosage tends to be a little higher than in Champagne. I'm on a non-malo style. I'm not saying I'm not doing malo. I'm doing about 10 to 20% of malo per
So
vintage.
malo, that means fermentation malolactic, and so that it's becoming, the wine is becoming smoother. It's a chemical process for those who are not really in the wine with business. So the wine is becoming smoother, rounder, and
Absolutely. So the style of the Quartet Roederer Estate is to be more fruit driven, very much towards that lemony apple character from the Chardonnay. The Pinot brings the backbone of the wine. It brings a little bit of that red berry character, a bit of the structure as well, but it also has pretty intense acidity. And I think what's make it nice, California doesn't lack sunshine, so we get maturity every year. It's a bit like in the Penedès area, we don't lack sunshine, so it's more, we have to tame a little bit that extra maturity by trying to pick at the right time, so we keep the balance of freshness and acidity. So dosage tends to be a little higher, for example, than in Champagne, but also tend to have a little bit more acidity. So I'm on the warmer part of climate, but I can get more ripeness, but also more acidity. And then everything being in balance, I may have to bring a little bit more dosage, because it balances that fair level of acidity compared to Champagne. So it makes a wine that has a brightness to start with, but it has also a lot of creamy character from that aging on the yeast. So you have at the same time fresh, bright start, and then also a nice long creamy finish. And what works very much here in California, because we're on that west coast of California with a lot of influence from the Asian countries, a lot of we call Asian fusion type of food. Wine that has acid like that works very well with a spicy Thai, Asian food, but also oysters. I totally agree. A lot of oysters, on the coast, the western coast of the US. Also works, with dishes that are very simple. Don't forget the pasta and pizza. This is also a staple.
When I tasted it, I already tasted it last year, and as the others as well. For me, it was very nutty as well. So some nutty notes and almonds, and so in the afternoon, because now in Germany it's late time, so I have done something to eat for it, and for all these covers. So just have a look. I have done a kind of quiche, and with ghost cheese, because I want to tell. Okay, you are on the coast side, and for oysters it's very easy, but in Germany it's not so easy to get oysters, so I have done a ghost cheese quiche with some nuts, and I have taken the nuts of our world trip, and some from Africa, but pecan nuts, and from Africa, not really from South Africa, but almonds, and so it was. I think it was very nice, and I didn't taste it, but I'm very hungry. It's now time to eat later, and I think it's a good combination as well. And I want to show you that it's not only big food you need. You can combine easy things and as well, like cheese, sausage, or whatever. And this is very fresh. The acidity is high, and it makes your mouth watering. It's very, very good and delicate. I think we have really those who have these wines today to taste. You see really different styles of wines, and naturally we are in 3 different continents, so that's the climate as well. And there is one question in the stream, and I think we will talk about this as well. How do I asked this question? I see this question. How do you want to manage in the future? This is for all the wineries, the impact of the global warming in your estate for sparkling wines, and pick the grapes earlier, plant other grape varieties, or whatever. This is a question. So perhaps we start with Elisabeth. What happened? Because everywhere in the world, I think the climate change is a subject we have to talk about. And Elisabeth, what happens in Spain concerning?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. The climate change, and we are changing at the same time. But I think that the easy way is pick up the grapes very early, that we are doing now. And a special plan in high in the mountain, for example, the Perelada that we have in Dio Cava. All the vineyards that we have Perelada, we are 600 meters up to the sea. So, and there are regions of Dio Cava that are more higher than these meters. So is the solution. Or we wanted the sparklings very, very easy to drink, freshers, aging a lot of months or years. So we need acidity. So the acidity is only if the weather or the climate is fresh. So is the solution.
Yeah, to go higher. And I have already been in the Cava region. You have high mountains over there, and it's really very high, and it can be cold as well. It's not like in Barcelona, which is very downstand. So I think it's a solution. But in South Africa, it's very hot as well. So what happens in South Africa? Is there a change of grape varieties or whatever? You cannot go really higher.
Not really. There isn't a change of grape varieties much, but I would say that some winemakers are playing around with introducing varietals like Chenin Blanc, but only to a certain extent. And when it comes to global warming, yes, the trick is to pick earlier, and the trick is to also pick early in the morning before the sun hits. I think that's the only solution when it comes to that.
Okay.
We're just moving earlier and earlier and earlier in the harvesting now. So taking earlier and to preserve the.
And in California, what happens in California?
A lot of things happen in California. It's the Wild West again. I've been working for the family over 22 years, and a lot of things have changed. So that part of California is close to the ocean, and we get a lot of fog. And it's true that the fog pattern seems to have changed a little bit. So we get a little less fog or a little less often. So that's cool a little less. What we've seen also that it gets warmer earlier in the season. So bud break used to be more later in March. Now sometimes it's early March. So the season where the grapes can be sustained frost is longer, starts earlier. That's an issue in the vineyards. It also means that then if you want to keep those 90 days between bloom to harvest, instead of starting to pick the fruit late August to early September, now we're starting mid-August, sometimes early August. So there's also that pattern that's changing. So the season shifts a little bit throughout. The interesting part of what may happen with the weather is like if it gets warmer in California, in fact, we may get more wind that is cooler coming from the ocean. So in fact, I may not get warmer. It may just shift the season a bit. So I may in fact get more issues at bloom time, having maybe some rain events or some fog events that makes the pollination to be not as good in the vineyards. So that would remain to be seen, but that's an option. And then the last thing, but it's the important one, is like the intensity of the fires in California. California is green. In Northern California, a lot of trees, it's beautiful forest, redwoods, lots and lots of trees. But as it gets, warmer and drier, then we have more and more fires that can start burning those forests, and early in the season. So if you pick fruit and the grapes early in the season, you may escape the fire season. And if you make, later pick, of your fruit later in the season, then you're getting, hit by smoke taint or smoke issues, which is, a big topic that now is in California. If you remember, Australia had to fight those bushfires already, 15, 20 years ago, and it's catching up to California as well. So this is unfortunately a topic that's on everybody's mind here in California is, how are we going to move forward with the season around that August, September, October? It's changing. And it's usually harvest time when it's also fire time.
Yeah, there is a question concerning the fires in Northern California last summer and whether there was an impact in your estate. I think you told me that you were not had fires, but directly, but it's not so far.
Right. The beauty of us being close to the coast is we get the wind from the west, and it pushes basically the smoke away from us. So Napa being about nearly 150 kilometers inland from us, so the most of that smoke
it's about here.
Exactly. So on the east side of the Emerson Valley, so the smoke would not reach us very much, but sometimes then the wind are not as strong, and then you get some smoke. So we were mostly immune from it because everything happened on the east side. But we had back in 2008 had fires just next to us, back then, and it was fires that were started by Mother Nature. It was like just lightning strikes, and it's dry, and that's how it gets started. So everything has the sets of challenges, and we're all trying to do the best possible solutions. The beauty of sparkling wine also is like we make, I make a vintage cuvée, but also make a non-vintage cuvée. So I can, sometimes, use and blend wine, so that to avoid the impact of smoke taints, or I can just, sometimes, make less wine in the year that would be a problem, because smoke taint is something that is, complicated. So thank God, I was not impacted, for the last 2 years, but I've had, to deal with it, firsthand back in 2008. It's, I like barbecue, but I'm not sure I like barbecue in my wine yet. So
you have these roasted aromas, perhaps in the grapes, not in the glass, but on the grapes. Yeah, because I roasted my nuts as well. So because I want to have these roasted aromas as well, but I think it's not so good in the grapes. So there are people who have bought 3 other bottles. So in total, the 6 bottles, 2 of the one winery, and we start again with the white wine. And from Perelada, perhaps you can give us only a small introduction, what is in, and because we won't taste it here, but we want to show it, is Stars again. Did you explain the name Stars? I don't think so. Did you? Elizabeth?
Yeah, sorry. The Stars, it's only the name that, because in the Perelada Castle Festival, that is the event that today is international recognized. You can see all the stars. If you are in the garden, you can see all the stars. So
okay.
that names, it's the stars. And the other is that all the stars, the people that is participate in the international cultural event, it's the stars too.
Okay.
So it's a really big stars.
So we are stars as well, because we are now on the screen and we are on YouTube and everything is live. Okay, so in this cava, you really find these traditional grapes, Macabeo, Tarello, and Perelada. So these are really the traditional grapes, I think, in your area.
Yeah, for sure. Macabeo, Charello, and Perelada are the really important varieties in Dio Cava. The Macabeo is the most planted in the Dio Cava, are considered to the originate in the Penedès area. And this variety has first mentioned in 1617. So it really, and the Charello is considered autochthon too to the Penedès region, close to the sea, close in Sitges, and with the Perelada makes up the most classic cava coupage or blend. And
we are now going to South Africa because we have a rosé of Pongracz as well. And explain us a little bit what is inside and how long does it take? Was it on the yeast, Andiswa?
Very similar to the Brut. It spent about 15 months on the lees. It consists of 60% Pinot Noir and 40% Chardonnay. The same fundamentals apply to bottle fermentation. In our dosage, just to heighten the percentage of Pinot Noir in it and to increase the fruitiness, mainly consists of Pinot Noir that has been kept behind from the very same vintage, but it's not it's reserve, but it's from that particular vintage. So this wine is about 1 gram per liter sweeter than the previous had. The acidity is about the same. And when you taste this wine, you get whiffs of strawberry and bread. That strawberry comes from the Pinot Noir, and your bread and yeastiness brioche comes from the Chardonnay, which is your 40%.
Okay, so you are working with the international traditional grapes as well. It's not like in Spain, because here you have really autochthone grapes, and I think this makes Cava very interesting, because you are allowed to do blendings with Pinot and with Chardonnay, but I think it's really good to stay with your traditional grape varieties. And so then we go to Roederer estate, and we have a rosé as well, quartet as well.
Yes, and then so the rosé is also built on 55% Pinot Noir, 45% Chardonnay. It's also on average 2.5 years on the yeast before disgorgement. And then the rosé is built on adding a little bit of red wine of Pinot Noir. So I do very little skin contact before pressing. but no, I pick, you know, Pinot Noir grapes a little later for some of it, and I make a red wine of it. And depending on the vintage, 2.5 to 4% of the Pinot in that, you know, bottling is actually red wine of Pinot Noir that's made especially for that purpose, and it brings, you know, the fruity character. It's not made with a target of color. Obviously, when the color is there, it's even better. But it's really about, you know, the fruit profile the Pinot brings. It brings a little bit of that crushed berry feel, a bit of that texture. Also, the wine feel, you know, wider. Is that the tannin structure builds the mids. It means the one that's, you know, has a nice, you know, width. I know it also,
when I tasted it, it was great. It was really with tannin. It was very complex, and I think it's something to combine with meat, or perhaps with a barbecue, or with something with something grilled fish or whatever, stuffed fish. I think it was very nice, and yeah, I think it's a great wine as well. But it's very complex and full-bodied, and perhaps it's because of the wines you have done the blend. So
right. No, if the wine has more complexity, can match no food that have also more complex, you know, fish a la plancha, or when I had a chef in Boston, you know, basically, you know, do a food pairing with a steak tartare, which is raw beef meat. And I was not a believer before. Now, as I'm a super firm believer, you know, in it. You know, you have the acidity of the wine that kind of like cuts, you know, in the fatness of the meat of any type of food that would have like some fat, you know, content. Acidity is a great way to actually, you know, cut through it and makes, you know, a good, you know, food pairing. So yeah, rosé works well with a fat fish. You know, like if you think of, you know, salmon, that works, you know, pretty well.
Yeah, with the salmon, it's not so far from Alaska where you find very good salmon as well, I think. Okay, so we will come to the end and to our session, and I think it was really so interesting, and I think we can talk hours about these different regions, and I think it's the first time you meet each other as well, and it was a little bit adventure as well for everyone of us. People ask me, oh wow, it's the first time you put 3 continents together with 3 different time zones, and then quite really good sparklings, and it was an honor to introduce you. Perhaps a last word to everyone. What do you see for the future, Elisabeth?
Sorry?
Cava for the future. What is your opinion, and what do you think about our adventure today?
I think that the future will be okay. It's the region of the Cara life in the winemaking area in Penedès, but especially in the town in Sant Sadurní d'Anoia. So we are there in the surrounding. However, for historical regions, Cava has also made in certain other towns in the regions, and I think that it's explosion too. So we'll have it Cava, and now we try to improve and special the quality, and just to give all the clients that they wanted.
Okay, so good quality. And about our adventure, what do you think about our adventure? You learned something? Yeah. Okay. And Vincent, what is for the future? What do you think of Cap Classique, Methode MCC?
Yeah, so Cap Classique is going to branch out, and we're very hopeful for the future. Like I mentioned earlier, it's just a matter of adapting to the new norm. As for Pongrácz, we are working on a couple of projects and products that we will be launching soon. So if you guys can just keep a lookout. Yeah, very exciting things about to happen.
Yeah. It is worth to taste for sure. So Cava, Cap Classique, and Roederer estate in Europe, but it's very rare. I think I know 90% you export. You 10% only you export to other countries. 90% is you drink it in California. Is correct?
Yeah, no, California is 25%, and the rest of the country, is, makes neither the balance. And export is only about 10%. So yeah, no, it's a big country. So everybody needs the bubbles, think bubbles, drink bubbles. It's fun, but it's also an alternative to white wine. If you're looking at the white wine, think bubbles. It's refreshing. It goes with a wide array of food. If you like spicy food, think bubbles. If you like, no meat, think rosé. If you like, oysters, no shellfish, think bubbles. So obviously, bubbles, can be used in a lot of different ways of, food pairing. I've been to Barcelona, and then I've been to the Penedès, in Spain, but I need to go and come and visit Andiswa, in South Africa. And I know it's beautiful. I know very well the winemaker of Merlust, and in Stellenbosch, and it's, it's also a friend. So, he's on my list, to do things. But
when we can travel. But this year, today we traveled around the world. Thank you very, very much to all of you, to the audience, to the winemakers. And we have had really, really good sparklings. And I say cheers to everyone, or we say cheers to everyone. Have a nice year this year, and stay safe and healthy. This is the most important thing, I think. And for sure, hopefully we see us analog, and we can travel, and perhaps the others can see me online again. So cheers, everyone. Bye-bye, and see you. Cheers. 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 Cheers.